It's 9:03, September 9th, 2020. The meeting of the Camino Real Regional Mobility Authority is called to order. Will you do roll call and then read into the record the COVID notices?
Yes, ma'am. Quick roll call. Joyce Wilson.
Here.
Jim Smith.
Here.
Michael Norwich.
Here.
Luis Rosas.
Here.
Patrick Byrne.
Here.
Nicholas Lamantia. Marco Zaragoza. All right, we're missing Lamantia, Mr. Lamantia and Mr. Zaragoza. I've sent something to Lamantia. Robert, if I could ask you to reach out to Mr. Zaragoza. Let me take a moment to read into the record the COVID-19 notices. Pursuant to the suspension of certain open meetings laws by Governor Greg Abbott, this CRRMA board meeting is being held by video and telephone conference. In accordance with the various federal, state, and local orders, the public may participate in the meeting using the video link or telephone conference information found on the CRRMA's website and on the posted agenda. This meeting is also being recorded and will be made available on the CRRMA's website as soon as possible after conclusion of the meeting. During the meeting, each board member making a motion or a second should state who made each. The chair will then call for those in favor, against, or abstaining. The public is invited to participate in the meeting just as with all CRRMA meetings. If you are interested in asking a question or providing a comment, please submit a comment in the chat function of the video component or ask to be recognized by phone. If there are no questions from the board, we are ready to begin with the chair reading item 2 into the record.
There are no public comments?
None received.
Okay. Then I'll move to item number 2, adoption of the minutes for the board meeting of August 26, 2020. Has everyone had a chance to review those?
Yes. This is Jim. Move to approve.
I'll second.
So we have a motion and second. All in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Okay, thank you. Motion passes. Item number 3, discussion and action on a board resolution to authorize the chair to execute an amendment to an interlocal agreement with El Paso County regarding the John Hay Street Extension Project.
Thank you. Raymond Tejas, Executive Director of the Camino Real Regional Mobility Authority. This item is actually good news. This is a project that we are developing on behalf of the County of El Paso. We are currently in the design phase. When we entered into our interlocal agreement with the county, whereby the county would provide the funding for the project, the county anticipated bringing down federal dollars and matching it with local funds. The original idea at the time was that the federal funds would provide 80% of the project funds needed for the design, and the local match would serve as a 20% contribution from the locals. However, when the agreement was actually negotiated and recently signed between the county and TxDOT, that local share was actually reduced down to 7.4%. So what we're doing here with this item number 3 is amending the interlocal that we have with the County of El Paso, showing their local contribution being reduced from 20% down to 7.4%, and the federal component increasing from 80% to 92.6%. So no real effect to us as we implement the project. However, where we are pulling the funds from to actually complete the design, that's what's changing in this item. So pretty straightforward, hopefully subject to your questions. So I would recommend approval of this item.
So this is simply just shifting around on how the funds are being allocated from what agency, right?
That's exactly right.
Okay.
And the total shift, just for the record, is $234,360. That's the difference. That's the amount that the county is saving and the amount that's being pushed over to the federal and state side.
Great. That is good news. Okay. Move to approve.
Second.
Any other discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? What's the matter, Raymond?
Nothing. I was just going to mention for the record, Mr. Zaragoza is now in the meeting.
All right. Good morning.
Good morning, everybody. Thank you.
Can we skip item 4? Because I think it was Mr. Lamantia who had asked a lot of questions about this.
Certainly. Yes, ma'am.
At our last meeting, am I correct? It was him?
Yes, ma'am. Yeah.
So part of this presentation in detail is really for his benefit to answer some of his questions. So let's see if he joins us and we can come back to it then, okay?
Certainly.
That's fine.
All right, so I'm gonna go to item 5, discussion and action on a board resolution authorizing the submittal of written comments to the Appropriation and Transportation Committees of the Texas House of Representatives in support of the Weiler Aerial Tramway Project and other transportation initiatives of interest to the RMA.
So on this item, as read into the record, we are talking about submitting written comments to 2 separate House committees. As provided as your backup, you'll see the actual requests for information. And just by way of background, the Texas legislative session is going to be starting up here in mid-January. Normally, these committees start meeting right around this time, and they solicit public input on the various interim charges that were assigned to them by the governor between the last session and the current one coming up. However, obviously, COVID has changed everything, and now instead, these committees are seeking written submittals in response to requests for information. So those requests for information from the Appropriations Committee and also the Transportation Committee were included in your backup. The Appropriations Committee specifically, there's an interim charge in there that looks to solicit input from the public related to Texas Parks and Wildlife Department's facilities, identifying which facilities require repair, renovation, upgrades, and really it's seeking input on how to prioritize funding for Texas Parks. For some of those, the older members, you'll know that the Camino Real Regional Mobility Authority has taken an active interest in the Weiler Aerial Tram, which was shut down last year due to maintenance issues. In fact, we went through the last legislative session and revised the definition of transportation projects within the RMA statutes to allow this particular RMA to be involved in any fixing upgrades or work associated with Weiler. So what you see here is as a part of item number 5 is a request that RMA staff be authorized to put together written comments to submit in support of the Weiler Aerial Tramway related to the RFI issued from the Appropriations Committee. Similarly, the Transportation Committee also released an RFI seeking input on a whole slew, I want to say probably 7 distinct interim charges. And these really are obviously more within the wheelhouse of the RMA. So I'm also seeking authorization to put together comments and submit those on behalf of the RMA. Now, obviously, I will be working with our outside attorneys who serve as the attorney for, I want to say at last count is about 7 separate RMAs throughout the state. So we will be collecting input from other RMAs, seeing what they are looking to do in terms of submitting written comments. We'll coordinate our responses, and I'll route all of that through the chair so that the chair can see each of those responses. So that's really what we're looking to do under item number 5. One other related note is that as part of this effort, we'll also be coordinating with the other RMAs to see what their legislative priorities will be for the coming session. And I'll route that through likely the planning committee so that you all can have some input on the legislative priorities for this particular item as well. So I hope to have that to you all probably in October, worst case November. We will want to have it in place before the session starts up in January. So anyhow, that's just more of a heads up on what's coming. So subject to your questions, I would recommend approval of this item number 5.
Madam Chair, Raymond, could you share those proposed inputs with all of us that you're drafting to put together to send to those committees and everything?
Sure, absolutely.
And then also, can you share your screen? I'm not getting anything that you're referring to. Like, can you put the agenda up and stuff, or do you want me to print it out?
So I'll ask Robert to bring up the agenda. I did not share the backup, but I can certainly do that if you'd like to see the backup for this particular item right now.
No, I don't think the backup for this one's necessary, but maybe for the rest.
Okay. Absolutely. I have those all ready to go. There we go, Robert. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you very much.
Raymond, just a couple questions on this. So it used to be that public input was sought to get the feedback that the state was looking for. Now they're going with this RFI process. Is this something that the public utilizes as well, or just agencies, governmental or community agencies and so forth?
It is open to the public as well.
Okay.
I think normally you'll mainly hear from agencies that are directly impacted by the interim charges, but there are certainly special interest groups and certain individuals that are really keyed into legislative activities. They'll chime in as well, but primarily agencies will respond.
I think it's a great idea. I'm glad to have the CRRMA lend support to this particular project, the Weiler Tramway. May I ask though how it is that we got kind of tied in with that project? Is this considered part of? I love the project, by the way. It just
Sure.
seems a little bit outside of our normal mobility, even though I guess it is taking people up the top of the mountain, but still.
That's right. Well, so the way that it came about was that the tramway, in fact, actually, I can pull together some backup material and share that with you. But ultimately what happened was that the tramway was being operated, of course, by Texas Parks. And there's this whole long history about who owns it, how it was transferred to the Parks Department and that sort of thing. But ultimately, they were responsible for the maintenance. They had a routine inspection and realized that the facility had exceeded its lifespan, and they were concerned about the obviously safety issues with a facility that was operating long past the lifespan contemplated for the facility. So they basically shut it down from one day to the next. The public was concerned about it, obviously, and Parks began conversations with various groups about how and what should be done with it. The RMA really ultimately expressed concern about interest in the project and noted that because we are such a unique agency, we could potentially be involved in this project if anyone thought that we could be of assistance. Generally, the consensus was the RMA could be of use, whether it was through planning it, designing it, financing, many of those options that we always provide to the various other agencies on the more traditional transportation front. And because there was interest, we went and worked with Representative Lena Ortega's office to draft some language to amend the term transportation project, which is in the state statutes, and that's what the RMA derives our authority from. We amended it to explicitly and specifically, I should say, include the Weiler aerial tramway as a potential transportation project for this particular RMA to be involved in. So that's the long and short of it, really.
Okay, thank you for that.
And I'll mention we did that at the time the facility had recently been shut down. We did that with the intention that we be a possible resource to Parks as they move forward. There was no promises of our involvement. I will say since then we have had some, I think, really encouraging conversations with Parks about roles that the RMA could play, and we're talking to them right now actively about that. So that's kind of where we are.
Okay, sounds good.
I think that's cool.
Do I have a motion then?
Is Jim so move?
Yeah, I'll second that.
Okay, we have a motion and second. Any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes. All right, we're moving on to item 6, which is the presentation discussion on change orders recently approved by the Executive Director for the 2013 County Mobility Plan and the Wynn Road Project.
Okay, I'm going to share my screen for this one. Okay, there we go. So this one, as we discussed last week, The RMA board authorized the executive director to approve certain change orders in the past month. However, whenever I approve any of those change orders, I have to bring them back to you in the following month. So what you see before you today is a report on 3 separate change orders that were approved in this past month. Pelicano Drive included 2 of them. You see change order number 3. This is work that we're doing for El Paso Water Utilities since some of the infrastructure that they wanted to place is right there on Pelicano Drive. They provided the original designs. However, they decided to change the valves that they're using from butterfly to gate valves. And you'll see a cost of $85,000. You'll notice also that the cost is in the El Paso water column. They are funding that entire change order. Change order number 4, and that was approved. Change order number 4 was also approved, and that was an electric steel pole a steel pole from El Paso Electric was not found on the original plan. So it was, however, it's in the right of way and needed to be stabilized while we did work in the area. So that added an additional $3,300. So those were the 2 that were approved for Pelicano. This is Wynn Road, as you'll recall. We've got number 5 and number 7 that are still pending. We're working out the details on those. And number 9 was actually approved, and that was placing water barriers along Pan American Bridge. That was a safety concern that we had to address. So that is $8,700. And that's all I have for you on this particular item. If you have any questions, I'm happy to answer them.
Okay, that's the only approvals then for this month?
That's right, and this is really just a report for your informational purposes.
Okay, so there's no action?
No, ma'am.
Are there any questions? If not, I'm gonna move to the next item. Number 7, quarterly presentation, update and discussion on the following projects or programs. A, Borderland Expressway Project, and B, the 2013 El Paso County Comprehensive Mobility Plan. Has Mr. Alamantia joined us yet?
I have not seen him. We have not seen him join just yet.
Okay, so when we complete these 2, if you want to go back over the bike share plan, just for the benefit of everyone else that's here, let's do that. And then maybe you can follow up with him directly and
Sure.
share the materials with him and maybe meet with him before the next meeting.
Certainly.
Thanks.
Okay, so item 7A is read into the record is Borderland Expressway. This is a project that the RMAs have been involved in for quite some time. We had a bit of a change in plans at the last moment. Today we have with us Kelvin Craker from the HNTB consulting firm. They're actually brought on board by TxDOT, and TxDOT has graciously agreed to have Kelvin brief us on this particular project. So I'm going to turn it over to you, Kelvin. Looks like you've got control.
Thank you, Director Tejas. Thank you, Chair Wilson and board. And this is a project that we're serving. My name is Kelvin Craker with HNTB. I'm a consultant here for TxDOT. Gus Sanchez from TxDOT, I believe, is on the phone. And this work has also been coordinated closely with, we refer to Jim Smith as the civic champion, the project champion, just as a civilian here associated with this project. And we're excited to share some details about it. And I'm sure, Jim, that you'll want to comment as well. And feel free to interject, Jim. So I've got a booklet here with 8 pages that I want to flip through. This is a publicly hosted document. And then I have a separate flyer that I want to share with you all. And Raymond might be providing additional background information as well beyond this. We have a rendering video that we didn't want to try sharing that large file on the WebEx here. This project straddles state lines. It's 10 miles in Texas and about 10 miles in New Mexico. And it consists of several pieces of highway that would form an express route around the north end of our metro area. It's important for a number of reasons, and I'll get into the details. So 2 states have been developing this project, TxDOT, the portion in El Paso, and New Mexico DOT, the portion in Doña Ana County. The New Mexico portion exists as 2 highways, NM 404 that connects to I-10 and NM 213 that connects to the state line. Those 2 highways, New Mexico DOT has been advancing along with a third project, an interchange at I-10. Those projects are funded, and the first one is under construction already. The Texas portion, TxDOT, led by Gus, has been advancing it, and it's nearly through environmental approval. It's been developed as a schematic design, and funding is being sought to build this new route in Texas. This is important for a number of reasons. One is we know that there's a strong pattern of east-west traffic flow in our region. I-10 is a major thoroughfare on a national level. And I-10, we hear a lot about its age and about its need for reconstruction. And I apologize, this thing's jumping around a lot. I'll try to get it steady here. I-10 is in the top 100 most congested roadways in Texas. And TxDOT is planning a downtown I-10 reconstruction project in the coming years that will certainly disrupt our local flow, but also national flows. So we're in the pass, right? We have the Franklin Mountains. We've got these topographic constraints. So this route around the north end of our metro, it has been planned for many years as a key transportation component to assist in our role of east-west transportation. There's also the reason of the military, and Fort Bliss needs to look at how to deploy northward into its training ranges and also eastward and westward, and this project helps with any movement of equipment from Fort Bliss to the west on I-10 into New Mexico and onward. So Borderland Expressway is one of 4 projects. Downtown I-10 is a second one. And then TxDOT has 2 other projects shown on this map that it's also developing. And these are part of RMS 2020, a consensus that's been developed at the MPO to advance these 4 projects of national and regional importance. And Borderland Expressway is unique because it works together so nicely with the planned reconstruction of I-10. I'll pause there and advance the page. We know I guess I'll just cover this here real quick. We know the vulnerability of I-10. We know that when there's an accident on I-10, as this one, where miraculously nobody was seriously injured, we know what kind of disruption occurs when a single truck crashes on I-10, especially here in the downtown depressed section. And so building system redundancy is critical, and it's been recognized. Having the Borderland Expressway completed before the I-10 reconstruction is also critical for those reasons. Travel times have been measured through El Paso, these 4 routes. The newest route is the bottom one in dark blue. That's Border West Express. Of course, the CRRMA was involved along with TxDOT in Border West Express. And I-10 is the default route in orange. Trans Mountain is shown in pink, and that's not an ideal route because of the steep grades, because at times it's closed during inclement weather of wind and moisture. And the green route, which is what's proposed as Borderland Expressway and other highways, is actually the quickest in terms of travel time. So it makes it a very viable alternate route to I-10. I'm going to switch now to economic reasons for the project. TxDOT has commissioned 2 institutes at UTEP. One is the Border Region Modeling Project with Dr. Tom Fullerton. One is the Hunt Institute. And these 2 institutes, along with HNTB, have performed an economic analysis to look at different aspects of the economic benefits of this project. This work is briefly summarized in this 1-page flyer here. Number 1, the freight value. As RMA, you're very concerned with mobility through the region, and new work. This is brand new facts here, but work has been assembled using the USDOT freight analysis framework to assess the value of trade along I-10 and to compare it to what we hear about a lot in Austin, and that's I-35. So the big numbers here under the blue shields, 157 billion is the annual estimate of freight traveling through El Paso on I-10, and 111 billion, which is significantly less, is the estimate for I-35.
Hey, this is Jim. Check your screen.
Oh, okay. I need to switch to, yeah, thank you, Jim. There's a different one to share here. Okay. Okay, here we go. So this one-page flyer is what I'll present next. Okay, so freight values along I-10 are significant, and therefore providing that redundancy is a key priority. Regional trends with Dr. Fullerton and his institute. He took a solid look at population trends, vehicle registration, traffic on I-10, and clearly these things are in upward trends. El Paso is confident about its future in terms of growth and economic opportunity, and projects like this help to enable that. Property values, tax values to public entities. An analysis of those figures, estimates was performed, and there's solid reason to expect good appreciation, good tax revenue that would accompany a new highway through El Paso waters, undeveloped land in northeast El Paso. In addition, the economic benefits include employment and other economic output benefits. And the studies looked at that as well, and those benefits are shown here for the two counties and the two states. There's one other measure, and that is looking at road user costs. And so the traveling public benefits in this project in the form of reduced travel times, reduced vehicle operating costs, reduced crashes, reduced emissions. And this is visible when you look at the congestion on I-10 and the longer travel time as compared to the quicker travel time and modern amenities, modern safety standards that you would see on a highway like Borderland Expressway. So this was exciting work, and all in all, it presents a great picture. It was done collaboratively with the city's Economic Development Department. Jim helped us to coordinate that with Deputy City Manager Kerry Weston. It's been presented numerous times at economic work group meetings that we had with, including the Borderplex Economic Alliance and other entities, as well as we've been advancing it through a series of informal coalition meetings where all of the government agencies that are involved, Fort Bliss and the DOTs and others, have come together monthly to see how this project could be advanced with funding requests in Austin. I'm going to flip back. I left one detail out, and I need to go back and emphasize, and that's with regard to the local connectivity of the project. So I'm going to stop sharing and share again, and apologize. I use WebEx a lot, but not so much Teams. Okay, so I'm going to go back to the map and zoom in here. So very specifically, this highway connects Loop 375 on the south end of the blue line, and that's with direct connector ramps on Fort Bliss property near the Fort Bliss Gun Club. It includes grade separated overpasses over the Union Pacific Railroad. It has interchanges at Business 54 Dyer and US 54 Patriot Freeway. And it connects to this FM 3255, which is MLK. So there's local benefits that I didn't get to talk about, such as to residents of Northeast communities like Mesquite Hills and North Hills. It helps with connectivity from Chaparral in Otero County, and helps, of course, with all kinds of commuting between El Paso and Las Cruces. I'll pause there and ask if Jim and Raymond want me to elaborate on anything else.
This is Jim. As most of you know, I've really had the privilege of being an ad hoc chairman to an ad hoc coalition of I call it a coalition of the willing. It's probably one of the most fantastic things I've ever been involved in. There's about 30 members of that coalition from Texas, New Mexico, TxDOT, county, El Paso Water, city, you name it. People are part of that, and they are an amazing group working together. And what's really amazing is when you watch them work together, and none of them are, I don't know what the right word is, none of them are beholding to the other. In other words, there's no requirement for them to do what they do as well as they do it. So it's really, out of all the stuff I've ever led and been part of in my career, this is one of the most fantastic I've ever seen out there. And we meet on the third Friday of every month. And right now we're doing Zoom meetings, but or whatever vehicle we're using. But you all are welcome to attend anytime, because it's. I think this coalition is a model for things that we can do in the future regionally, and this is important for us as the RMA, because we are a regional activity, and we've reached out to New Mexico and for certain things in the future. But that's what I really love about this project, because of not just what it does, but what going through the process of doing it has brought together so many different people all in one place. So with that being said, the Texas portion is the funded, the design has been funded, and it's going into construction design. The New Mexico portion is totally funded, all the way from I-10 at the interchange with 404, all the way down 213 to the Texas border. And Texas is looking at breaking up the funding of their $200+ million for their portion into phases. And the first phase they're looking at is the frontage road between connecting Railroad Drive and Business 54, Dyer. And so that's a pretty amazing thing, which will have some direct economic impact in the near term as El Paso Water, the PSB, then can make that land available to developers to commercially develop. And so that's got a lot of interest of both the city and the county and El Paso Water, and especially for Fort Bliss, because they have a lot of people that live out there in that area. So I will basically end it at that, and I would strongly encourage any of you that are interested to look at this, not only as a project in itself, but also as a kind of a model that we can use, putting coalitions together to go after future projects. So,
Yeah, great work.
So,
All right, thank you.
This is Pat. I think this is a great project. I think it's definitely needed. It's great foresight that whoever came up with this idea. I had one question I was looking at over the weekend. The 404 213, where it changes from blue to orange to green. What is that interchange? Is that I was going to drive by it, but I was out of town this weekend. I haven't been out there in a while, but that's a roundabout now. Is that going to be a full freeway with exits there, or how does it transition from the 375, 213, 404?
This is Jim. Basically, that's gonna, in the near term, that's going to stay as a roundabout. But they are, and remember, New Mexico has the full 4-lane divided limited access freeway funded all the way from the state line. And the exception of that is there is not an interchange at, it's going to continue to be an expanded roundabout, but it's going to continue to be a roundabout. They have a unfunded requirement, and they're They're going into design for what an interchange would look like, but that's not part of the first thing that they've already got funded.
Thank you.
Okay, if we're finished with this item, we can go to the next one.
Actually, Madam Chair, we do have a request from the public to speak. Mr. Cito Negron.
Okay, fine.
Mr. Negron, if you're on the line, you might have to hit *6 to unmute. Mr. Negron, are you there?
I think so. Can you all hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
Okay. I'll make it brief. I think this was a great presentation. I want to emphasize one of the comments that was made. The Paso del Norte is a historical corridor. We've always come to think of it as the Box Canyon that used to be dominated by Asarco and now is really dominated by the railroads and the highway. But really the Paso del Norte is the region, and it's anywhere you can get through the mountain relatively easily. And so the Anthony Gap is a great way to take traffic that's not essential to El Paso around the city. And it's a really necessary project, regardless of even what happened downtown, to provide another route, as was explained during the presentation. I personally, as a person who lives in the middle of the city, as an environmentalist, I have concerns about sprawl and concerns about the economic development that the highway would generate. I think that's a local issue that we'll have to spend more time on figuring out how the highway is going to interface with development opportunities in a way that helps the community be more sustainable. That's a different conversation. And I also think that there needs to be a lot of attention put on how this is going to be funded. My observation of the approach to TxDOT has been that it is exclusively downtown based. And so to be honest, there's probably some concern about the amount of money that's going to be available from the state. And it's imperative that this community come up with a phased approach to getting that necessary project done first, and then see if maybe it alleviates some of the need for the downtown expansions or frontage roads or other elements of that project that could help keep that project more efficient and allow both projects to be funded. But those are all discussions that need to be had publicly and transparently about how we stagger or phase in these regional projects. So anyways, thank you very much for the opportunity to speak, and thanks for the great presentation, and have a great meeting.
Thank you, Sita. Anyone else?
No, ma'am. I haven't seen any comments or requests to speak.
Okay, can we go to 7B now?
Sure. With 7B, historically, we don't present that. I provided as backup to the board. You've got a 32 slide PowerPoint that's available to you. If you have any questions, I'm happy to answer them. Otherwise, I think that's it for item 7B.
All right. Does anyone have any questions about 7B? Otherwise, I'm going to go back to item 4 and move through that fairly quickly, if that's okay.
Yes, ma'am.
Presentation, discussion, and action on the Sun Cycle Bike Share Program.
Okay, I'm going to share my screen again. This is Raymond Tejas, Executive Director of the Camino Real Regional Mobility Authority. So you should see the PowerPoint, and this was also provided as part of your backup. This was requested discussed at the last meeting. The idea was for the benefit of Mr. Lamantia. He had some questions about the program, how it came to be, and that sort of thing. So I'm going to start off with some program history here. The bike share actually, as a program, was initiated at the El Paso Metropolitan Planning Organization. It was originally envisioned as a $2 million program. Excuse me. I should mention, just for clarity, especially for our newer members, the Metropolitan Planning Organization, or the MPO, is the planning organization for the region. So when you think about the different agencies that are involved in transportation, whether it's the RMA, TxDOT, the city, the county, the smaller municipalities in our region, each of them sit at the MPO table. The MPO is really the clearinghouse for all of those agencies to identify what the transportation priorities are for the region. The MPO is also the entity that receives the federal funding that comes down for transportation initiatives, and the MPO's governing board, which is known as the Transportation Policy Board, that governing board then allocates the federal funding down to the implementing agencies like the RMA, the city, the county, and the others. So it's an important distinction, but the point to be taken away from that is that the MPO, which is the planning organization for the region, identified $2 million for a bike share program. This was back in 2013. It felt that it was important. The Transportation Policy Board approved this program. In the end, though, we ended up the MPO ended up breaking it into a couple of different phases. Phase one resulted in $720,000 being granted to the RMA. I should mention also the MPO is not an implementing agency. They are a planning agency. So the MPO does not own and operate transportation or implement transportation projects other than planning studies and that sort of thing. So when they envisioned this $2 million bike share program, they also envisioned the RMA as being the implementing agency that would own and operate the infrastructure. So that's how the program was laid out. First $720,000 came down to the RMA, included federal funds, TxDOT funds, City of El Paso contributed $100,000, and UTEP through their Green Fund, which is actually a student-led initiative. It's a student council group called the Green Fund. They actually contributed $24,000. They felt it was important enough for them to be participants. Of that $720,000, then we set aside $400,000 out of that grant for capital expenditures, meaning the bikes and the stations and that sort of thing, with the remaining $320,000 being set aside for operations. And that's an important point because this goes back to part of the reason that Mr. Lamantia, and in fact Mr. Norwich has asked some questions about this as well, related to the fact that bike share is analogous to transit. So bike share, much like Sun Metro or all of the other mass transit organizations that you can think of throughout the country, whether it's BART in San Francisco or MARTA in Atlanta, none of the transit systems, including bike share, through their fare boxes, none of them can support their operations, right? So there's always going to be some sort of subsidy or supplemental funding source from somewhere. So again, what we did at the outset then was identify $400,000 for the purchase of the bikes and the stations. The remaining $320,000 was going to serve as our operating budget for some time. And you'll see that theme come back in the various phases. So phase one included the purchase and build out of 80 bikes and 8 bike stations. We placed 6 of them downtown, 1 of them, in fact, at the community college, and then 2 of them up at the UTEP areas, and we worked those out with the Green Fund and with the infrastructure group there at UTEP. B-Cycle LLC is the group. It's a subsidiary of Trek Bicycles for any of you bicyclists. B-Cycle is a subsidiary that provides bike share equipment. So the bikes come from B-Cycle. The bikes themselves are actually Trek bicycles. The bike stations, the software, everything associated with the system comes from B-Cycle, and we selected them as the provider. We also did a procurement to select a third-party operator. As you know, the RMA is a very lean organization, so we don't have the staffing and did not want to staff up to provide the operations component of this. So we put a procurement out on the street, and a local group known as Messia Pedicab was selected as the third-party operator. So they provide all of the customer service. They provide the maintenance and repair of bikes. They fix flats. They repair the bikes. They track them down. They maintain the systems and all of that sort of thing. So that's Messia Pedicab. We also entered into a license agreement with the City of El Paso, and the intention there was that we wanted our system to be placed entirely on public rights-of-way. So we've asked the city, and they granted through a license agreement the ability to place our stations on the city rights-of-way. So if we move a station or place a new station on a new city right-of-way, there's a process we go through the planning department to secure authorization for that. The original license agreement, though, was an ordinance that was passed by council. And as I mentioned earlier, council, in fact, funded $100,000 of it for phase one, so they are actively supporting this project and the program. Then we, of course, branded the system. We called it Sun Cycle. And again, so that's, you'll hear B-Cycle, Sun Cycle, Bike Share. You'll hear all these different phrases, but it's important to understand the distinction. Our local bike share program is known as Sun Cycle. So we branded it and we launched on September 16, 2015. So we're coming up on 5 years here real soon with a group ride from City Hall out to Union Plaza. The mayor attended. It was a nice launch. Here are a couple of visual. Is the logo, and of course those are that's the station at City Hall. Those are the original bikes that we purchased in phase one and phase two. They're known as version 1 bikes, and that'll become a point of interest here in a second. So then we expanded with phase 2, and that consisted of the purchase and build out of another additional 80 bikes and 8 stations. So we basically doubled our system. And this budget, though, was from TxDOT and federal funds. The city of El Paso provided an additional $150,000. And UTEP proper, rather than the Green Fund, UTEP itself actually contributed $150,000. So because of that, we provided some additional stations up at UTEP. And I'll show you that here in a second through the map. Funding was again separated into future uses of capital and operations, capital at $248 and operations at $300,000. So you'll see this operations budget combined with the prior operations budget was intended to provide our operations activities for the initial few years of operation. Phase 2 also expanded the program footprint, as I mentioned, into the UTEP campus. We started adding area parks. Mr. Negron, who spoke earlier, we worked with him as the neighborhood association president for Sunset Heights. We placed a station in Mundy Park. We've also since added stations at Mission Hills Park and also Madeline Park. This phase 2, the additional 80 bikes and 8 stations was added in the summer of 16. And then more recently, in August of last year, we added a pilot program that launched 16 electric assist bikes. And that one, you'll see here, these are the electric assist bikes. So this is different than powered. These are not mopeds. You can't turn the handle and be accelerated. This is where you're actually pedaling, and there is a motor on the bike that assists with the pedal, and it allows you to get further and farther quicker. I'd mentioned this one too. We have a strong program supporter in Representative Sportsbine. When we were testing out these bikes, we had him ride up Stanton. You know, that's a pretty steep grade. He got up it with no problems with these e-assist bikes. These are a great addition to the program. We'd like to see additional e-assist bikes added in the coming years. So last bullet here then, I mentioned Mission Hills Park. I mentioned also Representative Swartzbein. He is actually a huge supporter of the program, and in fact, through his discretionary fund in District 1, he provided $5,000 for the placement of a new station at Mission Hills, which has actually been very successful and is a great addition to our program. Here is the map on the right-hand side. You'll see a lot of the consolidation of the stations are in downtown. Then you see another grouping there at UTEP, and you start to see us spreading out into the neighborhoods and into the parks. Here you see Mission Hills up at the north end and Madeline coming down back into downtown. As part of our work with the streetcar, we actually left room for a placement of a station in the Kern Place area, which has actually been a nice addition as well. You see folks riding from Mission Hills into Kern to have lunch or dinner, which is interesting as well. On the left-hand side, you'll see some of the materials that we developed for our social media presence as well. So again, these are the electric assist bikes. Here a little bit about the program, how it works. We use a fare structure that uses passes. You know, sorry, I just got a note from Mr. Lamantilla. He's in the lobby. Robert, can you help him get in there, or give him a call if you're having some issues on that end? Anyhow, so the fare structure we use here is passes. You can purchase daily passes, monthly passes, semester passes, annual passes, each for the amounts there. Daily passes is our most common usage. The way that it works is that if you were to buy a daily pass, for example, for $6, you have unlimited uses for that 24-hour period. However, they're limited to 30-minute increments. So what that really means is you can ride that bike for 25 minutes, dock it, and then check out another bike for another under 30 minutes. If you go past the 30 minutes, there is an additional user fee. The idea there is very similar to what you're very familiar with parking meters. The idea is turnover. You don't want somebody coming to a parking meter, parking there all day, and feeding the meter as they go back into their office, right? Same idea with bike share. You want the bikes turning over, so you want the bikes coming in within every 30 minutes, and otherwise you get an additional user fee for that. So that's the structure of it. I mentioned the bike stations themselves. They have kiosks, they have touch screens where you can use your credit card to check out a bike. We're also heavily promoting the B-Cycle app, which you can get on your app from the App Store or Google Play. And it's a really easy way to check out a bike. You can literally check out a bike using your phone without having to use the kiosk at home. So I mentioned the 30-minute rides. We also use Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. That's where a lot of our activity comes from. We've also partnered and have developed over these last 4 years real strong relationships with UTEP, MCAD, for example. UTEP, not just the fact that they funded a portion of the program, but some of their departments, the engineering department, by way of example, is a great one where each year or each semester prior to their final exams, they provide bikes to their students so they can blow off some steam right around the campus, and we bring all the bikes out to them, and it's a really great initiative that we're really happy to be part of. MCAD, which is the Museums and Cultural Affairs Department of the City of El Paso, does mural tours periodically in the downtown area, and we'll provide bikes and actually lead the tours for them as well. As I mentioned, Mesilla Pedicab is our third-party operator. They'll break out their pedicab and put an artist in the pedicab with a speaker, and they'll go around and teach folks about the murals in our area. And just another example, this is not an exhaustive list, but we also often have partnered with a tour of historic homes in Sunset Heights, for example, and we'll provide bikes so that folks can ride around Sunset Heights and check out the homes that are opened through their program. So lots of really interesting programs that we've been involved in. This is an example of one of our marketing activities where if you purchase an annual membership, you actually get a Hydro Flask that you see there inscribed with the SunCycle logo. That's a nice partnership that we had with, as you likely know, Hydro Flask is owned by Helen of Troy, so it's technically a local product that we're using there. So that's a nice little thing that we've been doing. These are a couple of screenshots from the app to show you how easy it is. On the left-hand side, you see our map. When you click on any of these particular locations, each of these blue icons here are each of our stations. When you click one of those stations, then it'll zoom in. For example, here we zoomed into Madeline Park. You can actually see the docks and which bikes are available. You'll see there's a missing one here in 8. So you can pull up any of these bikes. And I'll mention too, this lightning icon that you see there, that's an e-assist bike. So if you're interested in checking out or really finding where the electric assist bikes are, you can see that from the map because you can see that same icon here at the station locations. And we've actually charted, and you can see folks pulling a version 1 red bike, so it's say from downtown, and riding over to another station that has an electric assist bike so that they can swap out and pull the electric assist. So it's an interesting way to see the system in operation. And then, so once you click on one of those dock numbers to pull out the bike, this third slide here on the right, or screenshot, shows you how to unlock the bike. So assuming you've put your credit card information, all that sort of thing, you hit unlock bike, and you've got, I want to say it's 15, 20 seconds to pull the bike out of the dock, and you're on your way, and it's literally that easy. So it's a very user-friendly program through the app. So we highly recommend you all use that. Okay, here's the ridership and revenue information, and we've got Robert, of course, is available if you want to get into any of the details. You'll see here in yellow, that's fiscal year 20. That's the year that we just ended in August. And you'll see specifically this significant drop in April. Of course, that's COVID. And it was particularly harmful to us because that's when we normally see our ride season really start to pick up. So it dropped. But you also see this really steep line here going from April into June. And that shows a lot of folks when a lot more activities were closed down, people started riding bikes and realized riding a bike is still an appropriate activity that you could be involved in. So you really saw our numbers start to spike, and you see our numbers spiking again from July into August. So you see the ridership coming back up. Unfortunately, though, the dip was so harsh at the beginning of COVID, we're not able to get back up to last year's numbers. Of course, you saw them heading back up and looking strong, but we weren't able to bring them back up to fiscal year 19 numbers. In terms of revenue, you see the same pattern. You see the drop down here in April and May, but you do see a steady climb through August in fiscal year 20 here. Yeah, so it's a little bit hard to see a couple of those years. We'll work on the colors there for you in the next time we put this around. But anyhow, so that's what you see there. And this is the issue that we talked about earlier with transit and being analogous to transit. The revenues, and these are fares only, so the revenues generated from checkout of bikes was a little bit lower than last year. Last year we were about 80,000. We were there in fiscal year 18 as well, and we dropped down to about 76,000, if I remember correctly, or 71,000 for fiscal year 20. Of course, our expenses remain around the same, over about $190,000. And that's the gap that we're really talking about, that when we set up the program, we set aside operating funds. This is the gap that we're looking to close. I'll mention, or I have mentioned, bike share systems are analogous to transit systems, and that goes for every system across this country. There were initial thoughts that, for example, the New York system, which is called the City Bike system, which is being supported by Citibank, they thought that one might cover itself. Of course, it does not. So it's not surprising, nor is it unique that our bike share system does not cover operating costs. However, they are pursued throughout the country. And in fact, there are new systems launching still today because of their positive impacts to the community that they're found in. So it's quality of life issues, it's transportation, it's health, and it's economic development as well. We've had several inquiries from private entities asking for a station be placed in front of their business, for example. They want to see that activity. The most common options for supporting bike share outside of the fares includes the grants, of course, federal, state, local, and private. The issue we have there, though, is that many of the grants, especially on the federal and state side, are intended to support capital purchases. So we're talking about buying more bikes, buying more kiosks and stations and that sort of thing. There are not a lot of operational grants on the federal side, and that's one thing that we, through our organization of B-Cycle affiliates, and I should mention B-Cycle, not only do they provide bikes to us here in El Paso, they provide an operating system in McAllen, in Houston, in Fort Worth, in Austin. So they're all throughout Texas and, of course, the country as well, and I can share that information with you if you're interested. However, the important point to take from that is that we've been working with them from a legislative side to ask for grants to be expanded to allow us to use operating funds from grant awards. So that's an ongoing initiative that we're involved in. Advertising revenues is another opportunity for us, and that's where we could put, for example, a business's name on the side of the bike, in the front of the basket, that sort of a thing. And we'll talk here briefly about that program that we have as well. And then the last opportunity there is support by a public transit agency or local government, and you're starting to see that more often now. The biggest example is Los Angeles, where Los Angeles launched B-Cycle as well. I want to say they launched as a private entity. Eventually, they were actually taken over by LA Metro, and now they're owned and operated by LA Metro, and LA Metro, in effect, provides the subsidy for the operation of that system. Austin, I want to say, is looking at a similar approach where their transit system may take over, if they haven't already. They're talking about taking over their bike share system as well. Along that line, we have pursued grants. We've received a grant of $90,000 from the MPO, known as the Rider 8 program, and that was intended to provide access to the public. So we gave out a lot of comped rides in exchange for that $90,000 of grant funds from the MPO. So that's how that one worked. Mission Hills, I mentioned that one. Representative Schwartzbein, through his discretionary fund, provided funding to add the Mission Hills station. And I touched on this earlier. We have developed a sponsorship and a partnership program for advertising revenues. That's what you see here on this slide, the sponsorship program and the partnership program. We've got a couple of different variations here. One is geared for businesses, and the idea there is that we, for example, would walk into a hotel. We could sell them passes for daily passes. We could sell those at a discounted rate, and that hotel, for example, could offer as an amenity to the folks that are staying there. They could offer them a free ride on our system. That's one alternative. We could do something similar with bars and restaurants. The sponsorship program is more along the lines of the advertising that we talked about. We would allow them to place their business logos on the bikes themselves, on the kiosks within the bike share app, or even on the kiosk touchscreen as well. So there's a whole program that we've developed around both of those, and I'm happy to share those materials with you. They're on our website, and also there's a link from the app as well if anyone's interested. I would mention too, we were actively pursuing and had ongoing conversations with some major potential sponsors right when COVID hit, and as you can imagine, when COVID hit, all of those advertising dollars went away. So that was a really unfortunate timing for us, because I feel like we were pretty close on one or two of those. So that's what I have for you on the program. I hope that it was helpful. It was intended to be sort of a background of how the program came to be and what we've been doing so far. No, require just informational, really.
This is Mike. So I'm looking at the revenues since 17. It looks like it was about 95,000 in 17, about 80 in 18, 80 in 19, and about 75 this year. You said the operating expenses are about 190,000, so it's losing about 105 to 110,000 a year. Is that the city that's picking up the shortfall every year?
No, what's picked up, so we've never asked for a subsidy or a payment from RMA operating funds to date. And the way that we were able to handle that was those notes that I was making earlier about the idea that we separated the original grant funds from capital and operational, right? So we basically separated those operational funds and used those to support us in these early years.
Okay, so in other words, some of the money that was designated for capital, you redirected to the operating expenses, correct?
No. So I'll be a little more clear. So when you think about so go back to the original phase one, right? The original phase one program provided $720,000 in grant funds. 400,000 of that was allocated for capital expenses. 320,000, because of where it came from, was more flexible. So we at the outset identified the 400,000 that would go for bikes and stations. The remaining 320,000 we were going to use as our nest egg to serve as the operating funds for the program in the early years. So we didn't move anything around. We identified those funds, and because of the limited nature of their use, for example, the 400,000 on the federal side, we couldn't use that for operational. So that's what we did.
Okay, so that gives you about 3 years of cushion then. So you're kind of up against now needing to get this thing revenue neutral through either more ridership or sponsorships or whatever. Otherwise, how would the shortfall be covered going forward?
Well, what was included in the budget for this coming fiscal year was $100,000 of support from the RMA's operating funds, and that's how.
So the RMA is got $100,000 designated to subsidize this program for this year.
I believe it's 100. Robert, can you correct me on that amount?
That's correct. I'd also point out those MPO funds we received 2 years ago was the 90,000. That helped bridge the gap for that year as well, as those were able to be used for operations.
Okay.
This is Pat. I have a question on the operation expenses. It seems that since the past 4 years, they've remained pretty much constant, right? So are they the people that are doing the maintenance and whatever they're doing? I don't see it drop. You see ridership go down every year, but the operating expenses are the same. Normally, when you operate trucks or a piece of machinery, the less you use it, the less you spend. Are these people on a fixed salary, or how are we doing that?
They're fixed. So the activities that they do are all fixed by schedule. So they have weekly, monthly, quarterly activities that they have to do that they happen whether one person rides a bike or 1,000 people ride that bike. So
And those bikes are also sitting out in the weather, and so they still need maintenance throughout. Whether someone's riding them or not, as Mr. Tejas says, they still need work. And then we do pay for Verizon for modems to connect those stations so that the apps and the modems can talk. About the one thing that I guess is fluctuates up and down is parts and needing to put new lights or new seats as wear and tear happens on the bike, and that can kind of fluctuate, but it's still it doesn't change too much from year to year, but they are very flat.
And is there any kind of audit? Do we see what they're actually spending? How does their contract work? What we're paying them to what they're doing?
So it's all fixed fees. The monthly fee is fixed, so it's pretty straightforward. We do review their contract requirements periodically. In fact, I want to say I'd have to go back, but we went back and amended it a couple of years ago because of some of the things that we were requesting were a little bit different than we had originally requested through the original agreement. So we do that periodically. Okay,
and I had one other question. You mentioned the $5,000 grant for a new station. Is that what a new station costs? Is it $5,000 per station?
The $5,000 we actually are going to use that for the to offset operational expenses. The stations themselves are actually much more expensive than that, but through phase 2, we had already purchased the equipment. So the $5,000 is really more of a contribution to allow us to expand our footprint. So on the operational side.
Are there plans to go in any other neighborhoods other than Kern and Mission Hills?
At this point, we have a couple of ideas of where we'd like to place stations, but we're kind of on hold right now. For now, we're actually holding.
Okay.
Well, I should mention too, what we're looking at doing now is adding those e-assist bikes that have been so successful. There is a grant program it's a call for projects out of the MPO that would provide funding for capital purchases, which this would squarely fit into. So that's what we're looking into for you. Correct me, Robert, but I think it's fiscal year 22 and 23.
I believe that's correct, yes.
Yeah, so we're looking, that's what we're really looking at in terms of capital improvements in the near term.
So I think one of the tasks for us as an entity over the next year or so is to really begin to look at where are some potential revenue sources available that were, kind of maybe tabled because of COVID and our inability to engage. Working with the MPO, looking at some of the sponsors, maybe visiting with the city or others, so that we can have a longer term strategy about the reasonable expectations of sustaining this. If we're going to be part of the subsidy, how does that impact our operation? I'm not optimistic about the city actually taking this on because I don't really think that they're engaged in transit to the extent they could be. They've cut way back on that, which I think just is like a self-defeating prophecy, because if you don't have frequent service, people don't use it. I know the trolley's still out there. So I think we really need to use the next couple of years to think about where we want this to go, the realities of long-term subsidies, where that subsidy is coming from, how you engage other parts of the community to maybe support this by putting different stations, broadening the station base. And maybe that could be part of the planning committee charge, is to maybe do some strategic thinking on this as well.
Certainly, we can add that.
Do you know, has Norman joined us?
Yes, ma'am, he's joined.
Okay,
Yeah, I'm here. I'm sorry. I was.
Okay, that's fine. I've been waiting for you to let me know if you're joined us.
Yeah, I sent you an email back a few minutes ago. I've
Okay.
been on for 20 minutes probably.
Okay,
I'm
thanks.
sorry.
I checked it not too long ago and I didn't see it. That's why I was wondering. Okay, good. Do we have any other discussion about this item? Okay. Is there any action on it?
No, ma'am, this was informational only.
Okay. So the next item is item number 8, but I need a motion to go into executive session, and then we're going to have to hang up on this meeting, go into the new Teams meeting with Norman's link so we can do the executive session. And so I have something, am I supposed to read something?
Yeah, you'll ask for the motion and second to go into executive, and then I believe you do have some language there to read.
All right, I gotta find it. Hey, Norman, do you have the executive session language?
Yes, I do.
Okay, so it's 10:15. I'd like to have a motion to go into executive session.
So move.
Second.
I have a motion and second. Norman, you want to read the item, the language for executive session, and then I'll call for the vote.
Yeah, the motion is for the Camino Real Regional Mobility Authority to retire to an executive session pursuant to Texas Government Code Section 5551.071 to 551.088 to confer with counsel and to consider personnel matters, specifically with respect to item number 8 on the agenda.
All right, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Okay, so hang up and let's get to get into the other one, then we'll come back to this one, okay?
Okay. I will do that.
Thank you.
Okay, so we're hanging up from this one, right?
Yes.
We're getting on the other one.
Yes, sir. And then you'll come back to this one.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes.
Hello.
Okay, so Jim, Patrick, Mike, who else is back? Is Luis on?
I'm here.
Okay. Marco?
I believe he had another
Does he
meeting.
have to leave?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay.
I can do a roll call if you don't
Yeah,
mind.
please do, because we also apparently lost Nick because he's traveling. I guess he's been going in the wrong ones because he's traveling. So I don't know if he's got signal at this point. I think he lost a signal. So go ahead and do roll call so we know who's here.
Sure. Joyce Wilson,
Here.
Jim Smith,
Here.
Michael Norwich,
Here.
Luis Rosas,
Here.
Patrick Byrne,
Here.
Nicholas Lamantia, and Marco Zaragoza. Okay, we're missing Mr. Lamantia and Mr. Zaragoza, but we do have a quorum.
All right, thank you. And so just for the record, we are reconvening the regular meeting in open session at 10:35 a.m. There was no action taken during the executive session. I will move now to item number 8, discussion and action on a board resolution to approve the executive director's annual performance evaluation, to authorize the chair to communicate the results of that to the city and take other actions as necessary. Norman, can you read the resolution into the record, please?
Yes, ma'am. It's whereas the City of El Paso and the Camino Real Regional Mobility Authority Board executed a management agreement dated August 8, 2008, wherein the city provides management services in part through the executive director who is employed by contract by the city, and whereas pursuant to the management agreement, the city has employed the executive director for the CRRMA, whose performance evaluation is conducted by the CRRMA. And whereas the executive director and the city, upon recommendation of the CRRMA board, executed a renewal employment agreement effective September 1, 2019. And whereas the performance evaluation of the executive director for the period ending August 31, 2020 exceeds expectations. Now, therefore, be it resolved by the Camino Real Regional Mobility Authority that the performance evaluation for Raymond Tejas for the year ending August 31, 2020 exceeds expectations, and that the salary of Raymond Tejas be increased by 5% effective September 1, 2020, and that the chair be authorized to communicate the results of the executive director's evaluation and salary increase to the city of El Paso. Passed and approved on this 9th day of September 2020. If someone makes the motion, then it passes.
This is Jim, so move.
I'll second it.
So we have a motion and second. Any discussion among the board? All in favor?
Aye.
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 Anyone opposed? So Raymond, on behalf of the board, we want to thank you for your excellent service during this year. We believe that you and Robert have done a really extraordinary job given some of the difficult circumstances we're having to navigate right now with regard to limits on our ability to meet and engage. We also discussed that your success in initiating some new contracts with other jurisdictions, which has been pretty consistent with what we wanted to do, to look for opportunities to show our value and worth in the region, and kind of focus on our longer term sustainability. We're going to want to continue to do that over the course of the next year and moving forward, particularly with the new regional mobility plan that's going through the MPO right now. Hopefully there'll be some good opportunities for us there, as well as some of the TxDOT initiatives that might be coming down the pike. When you were talking about the legislative session and initiatives, I didn't see anything But I would like for you to maybe reach out to Representative Blanco, since he'll be coming in as our new state senator in all likelihood. And maybe get a sense from him in terms of transportation priorities and initiatives. Make sure that he knows that we're available to support their efforts if he needs anything from us as a body, okay?
Certainly, I can do that.
And I also think the board feels that Robert's done an extraordinary job as well this year, and I know that you do his evaluation. I don't think the board has a role in that. I wasn't sure, but I didn't think we did, but we just wanted to kind of confer our support that he be given good consideration as well for his efforts and make sure that his compensation is kept competitive with the market.
Absolutely, I agree with that statement. I have provided his evaluation, and it also exceeds.
Okay.
Thank you, ma'am.
Sure. Yeah, I don't know what his contract limitations are, but if whatever flexibility there is, we would like for you to make sure that that is addressed appropriately. And so if anyone else wants to say anything?
Well, this is Jim, and I'll tell you what, I really appreciate and admire the both of you as far as your professionalism and the way you go at your tasks and your job, and you really make at least me as my particular board member, you make this a pleasure. It's a pleasure to be part of this whole organization. So to you all, thank you so much for what you do for all of us, but specifically for me in support of our common objectives. Thank you.
Thank you, Jim. I appreciate it.
I'll echo that as well. Very good job, guys. Both of you.
Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thank you all.
And Raymond, Norman sent you a copy of the evaluation?
Yes, ma'am. I received it.
And so if there's anything in there that you want to discuss later, just let me know. I think it's pretty straightforward. Otherwise, we'll sign off on everything as soon as we get together, okay?
Sounds good. Okay, thank you. Thank you all. I appreciate your support.
Thank you.
Is there any other business?
No, ma'am. I think we've exhausted the agenda. I think we're ready to adjourn.
Okay. Would you get a hold of Mr. LaMantia just as a courtesy and see if he wants to go over the bike share thing? I don't know how much of that he got to see, because I feel kind of bad that he missed that. I don't want to have to go through it again as a board, but if he wants to visit about it, maybe you could set something up with him, okay?
Sure.
Before you adjourn, and maybe I was double checking something and missed it. Did you vote on item 8?
I thought we did we not?
Yes.
Yeah, we did. We voted
Okay.
on it. We
Very
voted
good.
on it, then we had the discussion.
Yeah.
Okay. That's where I got lost.
Yeah,
wanted to make
because
sure there was
I
a
got
vote.
kind of confused because usually we talk, but I wanted to go ahead and vote on it and take the action and then just provide some general feedback. That's all.
Just wanted to make sure I asked the question just in case we.
Yeah, I'm positive we did we not?
Very good.
Yes, we did. We had a motion from Mr. Smith, a second from Mr. Norwich, and unanimously approved.
Okay.
Okay.
All right. So with that, if there's no further business, I'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye. Aye.
All right. Thanks, guys. Have a great weekend too.
Thank you.
Enjoy the cold weather. Bye.
10:43. Thank you all.
Take care.
Thanks.